Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. Tonight we'll be featuring Australian lefties losing it. Yes, we have our own supply here. Do not send your enraged, TDS-afflicted lefties to our shores, America. Try New Zealand. But first, sometimes on this segment, I'm confronted with levels of craziness, levels of lefty ludicrousness that are just frankly hard to digest. I'm left thinking, is this real or is it satire? Sadly, it's almost always real.
No, you aren't supporting, investing, or organizing your community to uplift the most marginalized if you're still not masking. Our liberation has always been connected. The continued rise of fascism is directly connected to Palestine, Sudan, Congo, losing reproductive rights, anti-trans violence, xenophobia, and yes, COVID.
The rise of fascism is connected to Palestine and trans violence and masking. We've entered levels of intersectional madness previously thought impossible, and she's not done yet.
Being okay with disabled and immunocompromised folks dying for your convenience is not very progressive of you, especially when we know repeat infections can cause lifelong damage for all of us. If you are unable to handle the inconvenience of wearing a mask to protect your community, how much are you really willing to personally invest in the liberation of marginalized people? That being said, it's never too late to start masking again and taking more precautions.
There you go. It's simple. If you don't wear a mask, you're basically a fascist and a killer. You know, I bet I can guess who that gal's favourite TV network is. It's got to be MSNBC, where the hosts are as crazy as the ever-shrinking audience. Here, Rachel Maddow defames the man selected by President Trump to be the next director of the NIH, Dr Jay Bhattacharya. This is what Maddow had to say about a superbly qualified, courageous and principled man who is currently a professor at Stanford Medical School.
Trump's top candidate endorsed herd immunity as the best way to address the COVID pandemic. Just a fancy way of saying, let's get everybody sick and see what happens. Cull the weak, cull the elderly.
What a disgusting lie from a woman who should know better. For the record, Dr Bhattacharya advocated for focused protection of the elderly and vulnerable. But then we're used to Rachel Maddow lying, fibbing about everything from the Russian collusion hoax to the COVID jabs. Remember this?
Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus. The virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else. It cannot use a vaccinated person as a host to go get more people.
Now to veteran Democrat strategist James Carville, who is sick and tired of young progressive upstarts behind Kamala's campaign. And this meltdown is, I've got to say, superb fun. Enjoy.
Not only am I not interested in your opinion, I'm not even going to call you by your name. You're 23 years old. I don't really give a what you think. And let me tell you another huge error this way, is when people said campaigns need to reflect progressive values. No, they don't. No, they don't.
I like nothing more than watching lefties turn on each other, and Carville is in rare form here.
If I were running a 2028 campaign and I had some little snot-nosed 23-year-old saying, I'm going to resign if you don't do this, not only would I fire that on the spot, I would find out who hired them and fire that person on the spot. I'm really not interested in your uninformed, stupid jack opinion.
We mustn't forget that old school Democrats can be just as irrational, mean-spirited and bigoted as the new left. Watch here as Kerry Kennedy essentially disowns her own brother. This is gross.
I'm outraged and disgusted by my brother's gaudy and obscene embrace of Donald Trump. And I completely disavow and separate and dissociate myself from Robert Kennedy Jr. in this flagrant and inexplicable effort to desecrate and trample and set fire to my father's memory.
Now to women so enraged by democracy that they're screaming, quite literally, at the ocean. Now to some Australian content. Here is a woman protesting outside a synagogue in Melbourne, holding a sign saying, "Nothing is more anti-Semitic than Zionism," and listen to her reasoning here. This is incredible.
Why are you talking about anti-Semitism when you're not Jewish?
Because I've been impacted by anti-Semitism.
Are you a Jew?
No, people think I am, and I've been called a Jew and had someone threaten to kick my ass because they thought I was Jewish, so it's impacted me as well. We are not anti-Semitic. That's a lie.
So you've been affected by anti-Semitism because people mistaked you as a Jew?
Correct. Yeah.
Are you listening to yourself?
Yes.
No, you're not listening to yourself. You are harassed because people think you're a Jew and you think it's a fine idea to protest outside a synagogue and hold a sign saying Zionism is anti-Semitic. Can I suggest you start by looking up what Zionism actually means? Now to the Australian Parliament, and this outburst from Senator Fatima Payman is something else. She launched a vicious, hate-filled diatribe against Conservative One Nation Senator Pauline Hanson. Watch here as Senator Ralph Babet tries to maintain his composure. This is the Australian Senate, folks.
She says, "We're bringing in people from South Africa at the moment. There's a huge amount coming into Australia who have disease. They've got AIDS. If that is not racist, what is it? Oh, it's not racist. Oh, somebody bring the dictionary because Senator Hanson does not know the definition of racism." The fact that you would say just weeks ago to Senator Faruqi, "Piss off back to Pakistan," you're not just vindictive, mean, nasty, you bring disgrace to the human race. No dignity whatsoever as a senator.
Quite a disgusting display there from Senator Payman, frankly gross. And let's end with one more local lefty losing it. Here's the chair of the ABC, the public broadcaster that receives more than $1 billion of your money every single year to churn out leftist crap. Yesterday, the chair of the ABC was asked about the popularity of Joe Rogan. After admitting he is not familiar with Rogan's work, he launches into an unhinged, ignorant rant.
I am not a consumer or enthusiast about Mr. Rogan and his work.
Shocking.
I am not one of the 3 billion, and I'm unlikely to be 3 billion and one anytime soon. I think people like Mr. Rogan prey on people's vulnerabilities. They prey on fear. They prey on anxiety. They prey on all of the elements that contribute to uncertainty in society, and they entrepreneur fantasy outcomes and conspiracy outcomes as being a normal part of social narrative. I personally find it deeply repulsive, and to think that someone has such remarkable power in the United States is something that I look at in disbelief. I'm also absolutely in dismay that this can be a source of public entertainment when it's really treating the public as plunder for purposes that are really quite malevolent.
Joining me now for more is Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, it took Trump just one phone call to do what the Biden administration has failed to do for the last 4 years, and that's get Mexico to take some real meaningful action to help stop the illegal immigration crisis. Donald Trump spoke with Mexico President Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo, and he promptly put out this release saying she has agreed to stop migration through Mexico and into the United States, effectively closing our southern border. Surely it can't be that simple.
This is the Trump effect on full display. Now, the president of Mexico is new. She just won election in June. She just came into office in October. So she is not that familiar yet firsthand with Trump, but I think she's going to learn. And this phone call was her initiation. Look, I think the chessboard still has many moves to go. But Trump does have a blueprint because he did this before with a couple presidents ago when he negotiated the Safe in Mexico deal, where people coming from other parts of the world into Mexico can get safe harbor there and can't come over into the U.S., as well as tariffs and all these things. He's tried them. He's seen what's worked. He's going to push it hopefully even harder this time. And clearly the previous administration didn't want to do anything. Otherwise, they would have.
Well, no, and they dismantled what he was doing, like the Stay in Mexico policy. That was very, very effective. Now, Kamala's campaign chair, Jen O'Malley-Dillon, has complained about how the media let Kamala Harris down and lost her the election. This is incredible because the media coverage was almost universally positive for Kamala Harris, 84% positive, and almost entirely negative for Donald Trump, 98% negative, according to the Media Research Centre. But let's have a listen here to Jen O'Malley-Dillon.
Being up against a narrative that we weren't doing anything or we were afraid to have interviews is completely bull. And also took hold a little bit. And we just gave us another thing we had to fight back for that Trump never had to worry about.
Really, it seems like they are clueless about what really happened, why they lost so badly, how they squandered so much money, how they squandered all that goodwill from the media and positive coverage. If this is really where they are, there's a long way to come back because they haven't seemed to have learnt any lessons from this loss.
No, it was some serious coping. And you have to wonder how much of it is she was on camera on a podcast and she's saying what she, as the chair of the campaign, has to say. She's not exactly a reliable narrator. Or does she really know it deep down inside? Who knows? It could be that they actually don't believe it because whining about the media, for anybody who follows the media, is the funniest place to go. And when she was complaining that Trump didn't have to stand up to the unfair media the way she had to, he only had to stand up to being called a convicted felon and a rapist and an insurrectionist and so many other things.
Democracy, a fascist.
Yeah,
he had stories just absolutely manufactured to paint a crisis, whether it's the bloodbath or the Fine People hoax, which 7 years later the media was still repeating despite it being debunked. I mean, there's so many examples. We could be here all day.
Right.
But surely she's got her own reputation and credibility there. So to go on camera and say that, she looks like a fool.
She does, and that is interesting because they are going to be regrouping for whoever's next in her own career. And David Plouffe was off camera there, but he's a smart guy, one of Obama's people. He has been in other media saying that she just was a really flawed candidate, in as nicely put as he can say that. But she seems to be going all in and finding a bogeyman, which happens to be the media for her.
And I'll tell you how badly they were going. They've revealed that popular internet show Hot Ones turned down their demands to interview Kamala Harris, apparently because they didn't want to get political. This has got to be near low kosher, to be rejected by podcasters effectively when you're running to be the President of the United States.
That really is funny. I will say, to give the podcasters the benefit of the doubt, if it's true that they have never had a political guest on, that's what they claim. I'm actually not that familiar with all of their episodes. Good for them in this overly political world that we live in. If there's one podcast out there, say, trying to be pure, that's great. But it is a low for her. And you know what the biggest one is, instead of whining about that one, Joe Rogan, everybody knows how that story went. She had an opportunity to be interviewed by him, passed it up, or didn't want it to be the free-flowing 3-hour format that he's known for, and that is a way she could have gotten cut through to 15 million people, and she blew it.
Well, O'Malley-Dillon also revealed just how they botched that. Again, I don't know if she's lying or whether this is an admission, but Kamala was even in Texas and she still messed this up, and it seemed to be, we can't put aside an entire day. The world's biggest podcast, right. You surely can. I don't actually believe that. I think they were smart enough to know that it would have been a train wreck. She would not be able, if she can't deal with The View and the softball questions from them, how's she going to deal with Joe Rogan, who asks probing questions and wants to have a real conversation?
And you need the intellectual stamina to go through 3 hours unedited with him. She couldn't have done it. And it's, again, easy to blame her schedule, as if you can't fly in, do an interview and fly out.
she's got a jet. She had over $1 billion to play with. I'm sure she could have got there. Now, another left-leaning mayor, this one of Tucson, is that how I pronounce it, in Arizona, Regina Romero, says she's going to do everything she can to stop mass deportations. She says they're cruel.
I am deeply troubled by President-elect Trump's plans for mass deportation. I believe they are cruel and immoral. I will work with our police chief to make sure that our focus remains on protecting and serving Tucsonans. I am unwavering in my commitment to this fight.
Oh, Kosha, what do these mayors not understand about elections having consequences? Donald Trump has a clear mandate when it comes to deportations. It wasn't a secret. It was a major policy platform. And he's won. He's won everything. He's won the House. He's won the popular vote. He's won the presidency. Exactly what are they?
And his approval rating is high, and support for this issue in particular has only trended in one direction. And something like 70% of Americans support some version or some quantum of mass deportations. I think what they're going for is they know that they can flout the mandate and the law and all of this, as they have done for the past 40 years in varying degrees, and especially in his first administration, he was met with similar opposition. They're doing it right now. The mayor of Denver came out last week. She's come out now. So they're basically pointing to the sanctuary cities that they run, or states, and they're saying, you know, we don't support it. Let's see what you're going to do. And the number one question on everybody's mind is this time going to be different? Where, you know, Trump did a little bit last time, but he didn't go scorched earth. And will he this time, given that the public sentiment is on his side, and he's much more emboldened, I think, given the mandate that he's received.
And given the person who's put in charge of that particular area, I think it is going to be scorched earth. Could it be a strategy here for Republicans to say, OK, you want to be a sanctuary city, you want to be a sanctuary state, fine. Illegal immigrants can move there, and in the other states where they are going to cooperate, we're not going to have this issue. I mean, could that be a strategy you employ? It says you vote for these policies,
you live by them, and cutting funding, federal funding for sanctuary states. And there are definitely levers, for sure. They need the political will and the spine to fight people like this, to fight the media, to reframe the issue. And let's hope that this time the team is much more equipped to do so.
But of course, longer term, you would imagine the Democrats have plans to have a path to citizenship fast-tracked for a lot of these. And we're talking about millions upon millions of people, and they're counting that they're going to be voting Democrats for the foreseeable future. They may be wrong, but that's what they're hoping for. Now, let's talk about this story. This is incredible. A story about DEI training, a study that looked into its impact, was supposed to be published by the New York Times and Bloomberg, but they reportedly decided not to publish the story after the results of the study went very differently to what they imagined. The study, in fact, found that DEI policies, we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI training actually makes people see prejudice where it does not exist. It results in increased hostility, promotes agreement with extreme rhetoric, such as adapted Adolf Hitler quotes. This is incredible. This is what we're talking about, because a lot of this so-called affirmative action, reverse racism, it's just racism. It's just an obsession with race and giving certain privileges to people for things that they have no control over, whether it's their gender, their ethnicity, or their sexual orientation.
Yes, and on top of that, it's like an $8 billion industry, this whole DEI complex. People like Ibram X. Kendi and Robin DiAngelo have become multi-millionaires off this industry and the solutions that they purport to do it. Half the American workers have had to take some form of training in HR departments about this stuff. So at best, it's a complete and utter waste of productivity and value in these companies. And at worst, it's something more sinister, like you're saying, that it's actually priming people in a negative way. So not only is it a waste, but it's making people focus on things that they otherwise wouldn't have. And I think that blind taste test in this study, where they were taking passages from Hitler and changing out people, is fascinating. And some enterprising podcaster should go and do a whole bit on that, because I think it would go viral.
That was incredible. This study is, we could talk about it for an hour. Some of the insights are incredible. Kosha Gator, thanks so much for your time tonight.